Donald Trump fired the chief of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. How will that affect the U.S. economy and the global economy? Welcome back to another KuLAB. I'm Ku, and this is our laboratory for learning. Thank you for joining me again for our new business news breakdown series, where we take a look at prestigious business journals, the business news being produced for business people, and we break it down, look at some core concepts, look at some vocabulary, so that we can understand business news as it's written. Today we're looking at an article in the Financial Times regarding Donald Trump's decision to fire the chief of the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics. How will that impact the U.S. economy? How will that affect the global economy? Should be a fun read. Let's go ahead and jump right in to another KuLAB. So as always, I like to accredit the authors here. So let's give a thank you to Kate Dugan, James Fontanella-Kahn, and Ian Smith. Let's take a look at our headline. Donald Trump's attack on U.S. Labor Statistics Agency spooks investors. So we'll talk briefly about the U.S. Labor Statistics Agency. It's a non-political agency in the United States that provides data regarding unemployment, regarding how many jobs were gained or lost, and it does this monthly. So the U.S. Labor Statistics Agency has about 2 surveys that they send out. They send out what's called a household survey. So this survey is sent out to about 60,000 households in the United States to get a representative statistic. So it includes questions like, are you employed? Are you not employed but looking? Are you out of the job market altogether? So it can get a good estimate of the unemployment in the United States. They also send out a second survey called the Establishment Survey. Now this is sent to about 650,000 workplaces across the United States. So this survey looks at payroll employment from U.S. companies. So specifically what's called non-farm payroll. So this has to do with any businesses that is not a farm, because the United States handles farms and agriculture a little bit differently. But basically, it looks at payroll. The companies send this back, an HR agent, and it kind of gives you an indication of how many jobs were created, how many jobs were lost, how many jobs are open yet to be filled. So you can pinpoint, the tech industry, gained 100,000 jobs last month. So they do this survey every month, and then they publish the data on the first Friday of the month. And that data is used to sort of inform public policy. It's used by investors to see how the economy is going. Is there low unemployment, which means that lots of people have jobs, which means there's lots of money, which means that goods and services are going to be bought and sold. And so the economy is very good. And investors like that. They can invest in new companies to grow the economy. On the opposite side of that, if the numbers are quite low, if there's high unemployment, which means a lot of people don't have a job, then there's not a lot of money. People aren't spending a lot of money. Maybe people are afraid. So these numbers are quite important and very, very important to get right, because they affect the economy on such a large scale. In terms of the global economy, global investors look at these numbers. Since the United States economy is so big, global economy often looks to the United States to see how their economy is doing as an indication of, the overall broader economy. That's what the Bureau of Labor Statistics does in the United States. And many other countries have something similar to this. And it's particularly not political. Usually there are just economists. They don't care who's the president. It doesn't matter what the public policy is. Their job is to give the numbers, process the data, and then just report it to the public. So this particular person was confirmed in the Senate overwhelmingly by Democrats, Republicans, a non-political type person. So this is an interesting story to take a look at. Getting back to our headline, we'll take a look at the word spooks. And so spooks means to scare or frighten. In this case, they spooks investors. So investors are a little bit frightened that Trump would fire this person for revising some of the numbers. Our subheading here: President's sacking of Bureau of Labor Statistics chief undermines faith in official data, says economist. So we talked a little bit about the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We talked about this person. So we'll take a look at the word undermines faith here. The word undermine here means to damage the trust or effectiveness of an institution. When you have an institution that a lot of people trust or affects the economy in such a significant way, then if you call into question that entire organization, it undermines the trust that people have in that organization, and it's less effective. People don't trust it as much, and it becomes less useful. Donald Trump's decision to sack the head of a top statistics agency will undermine investor confidence in the integrity of U.S. economic data and could hamper policymaking, investors and economists have warned. So we talked about undermine already. The integrity just means you're truthful. It means that you are saying what is correct and you're honest, trustworthy. So the integrity of the U.S. economic data is used, again, by everyone across the world. So this is quite important. Could hamper policymaking. This sentence, hamper, means to hurt it or slow it down in some way. If you want to make policies based upon this data, like should we increase the interest rate? Should we invest in certain technologies? Should we look to certain industries? If you want to make policy, you need good data to make policy decisions. And if that data isn't trustworthy, then the policy making will slow down or it could hurt that policy making. Trump, late on Friday, fired the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics hours after its July job report showed hiring had nearly stalled this summer, with employment growth for May and June revised sharply lower. So stalled means to almost come to a standstill. If something stalls, it means it sort of stops for a little bit. If you're driving a car and your car goes and it stalls, it means it's not running anymore. It means it's not moving forward in the way that you want to. It's not growing in this case. Hiring stalled. It means people and businesses weren't hiring anyone. Employment growth for May and June revised sharply lower. The adverb here, sharply, means significantly. So it was a dramatic change from the numbers. So this usually doesn't happen as much. So these numbers were reported and then they were revised sharply lower when the new data came in, and it was a surprise to a lot of people because not many jobs were created. Now let's talk a little bit about this idea of revising numbers. This is going to come up. The Bureau of Labor Statistics sends out these reports every month, and they get back some of them, but in the United States, not all of them come back in time to get a complete picture or complete data. So they take the data they have, partial data, and they make sort of an estimate based upon the data that they might have. They will report this information on the first Friday of the month like they're supposed to. Now later in the month, when some of the last remaining data comes in, if it causes those numbers to adjust some, you will often have a revision of numbers. Now those numbers can go down, those numbers can go up. It's not really a matter of doing anything that's unnecessary or political. This happens every single month, mostly because a lot of these companies don't send back in their survey. There is some data that's missing a little bit, and the report has to be done at the first Friday of every month, and so they issue this report using the best numbers that they have. And usually they're pretty close, pretty good. Usually the revision isn't so significant. This particular case, over the past few months, the revisions were pretty significant in terms of not many jobs created. you'll sort of hear this idea of revise the data. And that's what that means. It just means when all of the data comes in, then they issue more up-to-date, more clear numbers that reflects all of the information that they got. The US president claimed without evidence in a CNBC interview on Tuesday that the BLS data was totally rigged against him and that the agency had become highly political. So totally rigged is a phrase that Donald Trump uses quite a bit. Rigged means that people are working behind the scenes to change the data, to make him look bad. He often claimed that the election was rigged. It just means that it's not true, and he often says this phrase quite a bit. The key phrase in the article, again, without evidence. Obviously, Trump many times says a lot of things, and he often calls things rigged and says things are political, even if they're not. As far as we know, the data isn't political. These kinds of revisings happens a lot every month. These just happen to be sharply lower. It didn't show that the U.S. economy is growing in the way that maybe Trump and the Trump administration had been telling people it was. Executives and economists told the Financial Times the unprecedented move against the BLS would erode investors' faith in an institution that compiles labor and inflation reports, underpinning the pricing in trillions of dollars in assets. So this is a good paragraph. Let's break it down. Unprecedented move. So unprecedented means it hasn't happened before. To have a precedent means, this has happened and we can look to this thing happening and it can happen again and again. This is one of the first times that the Bureau of Labor Statistics chief has been fired immediately for a revised job report. Just doesn't happen, mainly because of the rest of the sentence. It would erode investors' faith. So erode in this sentence means erosion. Erode means to wash away, means it goes away. And so we're talking about investors here. Their faith would go away. They wouldn't think the economy's doing very well. They might not care about these statistics anymore. And so it really causes a problem for the United States, for the global economy, for just information about the economy if no one believes the numbers. If you don't believe the numbers, then you can't use them in any meaningful way. In an institution that compiles labor, so compiles means to gather the data, organize the data. So when you compile something, you put it together. Often used when you're talking about programming to compile some code. In this case, they're talking about data. So getting all of those reports in, all of those surveys in, and sorting it, entering in the data, and then making it useful for people to make some policy decisions. So the word underpinning in this case means to support. When you underpin something, it means you provide the foundation for it. You are the support for this. And so these numbers, this data, is used to support the pricing of assets. So assets are stocks and bonds and anything that you can buy in a publicly traded company. A lot of things, even something like a factory, anything that a company holds is an asset. If there are lots of jobs, if the economy is performing well, then those assets are worth a lot more. But if the economy is not going so well, then those assets maybe aren't worth as much. Things like stocks, bonds, any sort of mutual funds, anything like that, anything that can be priced that uses this sort of data, is quite important. What they're saying is that this data that has been used to price trillions of dollars of assets, if it's not useful anymore, then the price of all of these things could be wrong, which could be really difficult, really bad for the economy. If the very foundation, the very data that you are using to value all the things in the economy goes away, that's a problem. Not only the United States, but the world. firing of this person just because they think the data is rigged or faked or against Trump is quite dangerous in terms of the global economy. Trust in institutions is why the U.S. has been a destination for foreign investment. One of those institutions is the country's statistical agencies. The statistical agencies are really good. They are very trustworthy. They report very factual data, and countries and investors all over the world use the United States data because it's not political, because it is very clear. Even the revisions that happen, they happen all the time, and so people are used to it, and so you can depend on this information to be true and to be accurate. And because the United States does a good job of that, and because they have the #1 economy in the world, investors trust them. The Wall Street Bank told client that Trump's removal presents risks to the conduct of monetary policy, to financial stability, and to the economic outlook. Monetary policy being policy about money, about interest rates, anything that affects money is monetary policy. Financial stability is just being stable with financial information, financial news, and the economic outlook. So economic outlook is the future of the economy. So what does it look like? The United States Statistics Department is very important in understanding all three of these. Investors have grown increasingly anxious about the resilience of the U.S. institutions to pressure from the Trump administration. Repeated attacks on the Federal Reserve's leadership and interest rate decisions have rattled markets this year. So anxious is when you feel uneasy about something. Resilience means the ability to withstand something, the ability to stay strong, right, when things are going bad or when things are bad are happening, to be resilient. This is saying investors all over the world, they're very anxious because Trump seems to be pressuring these agencies, these non-political agencies who just report the numbers if he doesn't like the numbers. And that's quite dangerous for an economy. There is a risk this will impact the statistics. So how will we have to read them from here on? Regaining the trust will be harder than giving it up. So this is a person that's saying this will impact how we read the statistics. Are the statistics going to be given by someone who will just want to please Donald Trump? Maybe they're not true at all. Regaining the trust in those institutions, she says, will be harder than giving it up. It's like any other thing in life that once you think something is untrue, or goodness forbid someone lies to you, it's very hard to get that trust back. Director of the White House National Economic Council defended the decision to fire, telling NBC News on Sunday that it was the president's highest priority the data be trusted and that people get to the bottom of the questions over data reliability. Trump has said he will appoint a new BLS commissioner in coming days. So this is a person who knows Trump quite well, who is defending it and saying, President Trump's highest priority is the data be trusted of the questions. So when you get to the bottom of something, that means like an investigation. That means you find out the truth of something. Data reliability. Reliability, to be reliable, again, is another word that means trustworthy. We can rely on it. It's honest and accurate. Following the announcement on Friday, haven assets that offer an alternative to the U.S. rose, with gold prices enjoying their best day in 2 months. The precious metal has been on a record rally this year, helped by concerns over the long-term outlook for dollar assets. So what this means is haven. Haven means like a place that you can go that is away from the chaos, away from all of the craziness, away from the anxiety. A haven is like a peaceful place. So haven assets are assets that don't care about politics, don't really care about inflation or anything like that. So things like gold, precious metals, these types of products offer an alternative to the U.S. So anything that doesn't have to worry about Donald Trump, that doesn't have to worry about inflation in the US, doesn't have to worry about Bureau of Labor Statistics data, those types of assets are seeing a lot of rise. We'll probably see that continuing to happen over the next few years of the Trump administration, depending on what happens with tariffs, depending on what happens with the Federal Reserve and now the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So it's a very big deal in terms of the economy, and we will hopefully see what happens. Okay, thank you very much for joining me for a very informative article, a look at the U.S. Data Collection Agency, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So if you enjoy this kind of content, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Help us out. Leave a comment below. This is, of course, a KuLAB. So let us know what you think. Ask any questions you might have, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks again for joining us, and I hope to see you again in the next KuLAB.